Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what discussions the Scottish Government has had with COSLA with regard to proposals in some local authorities to reduce teacher numbers, given its commitment to increase teacher numbers by 3,500 by the end of the current parliamentary session.
First Minister.
Well, I am very firmly of the view that a reduction in teacher numbers would not be in keeping with our commitment to raise attainment and close the attainment gap in our schools. Indeed, as Christine Graham has set out, this Government is committed to recruiting additional teachers and classroom assistants. We have provided an additional £145.5 million in this year's budget, specifically to recruit additional teachers. That funding will also be included in next year's budget for councils as part of our ongoing commitments on teacher numbers. Deputy First Minister and the Education Secretary met with local government representatives on Tuesday to discuss how we best deliver on this commitment and also protect learning hours. And the Education Secretary will set out further steps to the Scottish Parliament over the coming days.
Christine Graham.
I thank the First Minister for her answer. As a former secondary teacher myself some time ago, I have huge regard for the commitment of the profession and indeed benefited as someone from a working class background to state education through to university. But context is all, and budgets are under severe pressure as a result of 10% inflation at Scottish and local government level, with the same pressures in Wales and England where teachers are on strike. The issue of funding for education is not a Scottish Government problem, it's a UK-wide one and a direct consequence of raging inflation, which Anas Sarwar, in his exchange with the First Minister, sidestepped. Is it not time, First Minister, that Rishi Sunak ditched his current policy of austerity to tackle their own self-inflicted inflation, increased funding to this Government and Wales while they're at it, dealing with the fallout of a decade of failed Tory policies, exacerbated by Brexit?
Thank you.
A revolving door of four Tory councillors in 1 year, and who could forget Liz Truss?
First Minister.
Christine Graham is absolutely correct, and the discomfort on the Conservative benches was palpable while she was speaking. I also detected a bit of discomfort in the Labour benches. I'm not quite so sure why that should be the case. But the fact of the matter is the budget that this Government works within is constrained by decisions taken by UK governments who still hold most of the financial levers. But within that, we are doing everything we can to protect public services and secure the fairest possible pay deals for those who work within our public services. But Christine Graham is right. This Parliament, this Government would be able to do so much more if Rishi Sunak loosened the purse strings, started to negotiate fair pay deals with public sector workers in England and increase funding to the devolved administrations. And surely that's something all of us across this chamber should unite to call for.
Stephen Kerr.
Well, what we have heard is a bizarre question followed by a bizarre answer. This is a bizarre situation that only Nicola Sturgeon could have concocted. The SNP government now reportedly threatening to sanction local councils because of SNP underfunding. The First Minister is forcing councils to choose between deep cuts to local services or above-inflation tax increases. Or how exactly does she expect them to pay for her commitment to increase teacher numbers?
First Minister.
It's only a couple of weeks that the member's leader in this Parliament was saying that the Government had to ensure there was no reductions to teacher numbers. So I think the Tories should make up their minds which side they are on. But if Stephen Kerr wants this Government to allocate more resources to local government or to any other part of the public service, then either he, like I challenged Anas Sarwar to do earlier on, has to tell us where that money should come from, or perhaps they should call on their bosses at Westminster to deliver more funding for the devolved administrations. And finally, Presiding Officer, they should probably drop their call for tax cuts for the richest in our society. I think Liz Smith just this morning say that one of the priorities for the Scottish Government in our budget should be to narrow the tax gap between Scotland and the rest of the UK. That tax gap is because we are asking those who earn the most to pay a bit more, which obviously means the Tories still want to see tax cuts for the richest, which would reduce funding for public services. There is no consistency or principle whatsoever coming from the Tory benches.